Pelosi is one of the Democrats who squeezed him out of the race. She thought he was going to sink the whole ticket. So how mad is he at her for that?
The president respects his good friend, former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
It does seem like there's some residual bad blood or resentment, and I'm wondering if you've spoken to him and what your response is to that.
Sometimes you just have to take a punch for the children.
Are you angry at Nancy Pelosi? Are you going to speak with her?
No, I haven't spoken to Nancy at all.
Do you think your relationship will be there?
I hope so. I pray so. I cry so. Yeah.
You worry about it?
I lose sleep on it. Yeah. Yeah.
You think he's angry at you? You think he's angry at you?
I don't know. We haven't had a conversation.
He's still angry with you, for sure, 100%. And that is based on a recent interview that First Lady Jill Biden recently had with the Washington Post. It was a bit of a fluff piece, I'm not gonna lie, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But before we get to the fluffiness of this exit interview, I think the way she talked about Nancy Pelosi really does give you a sense that there's a lot of bitter man action here. So at first, when she was asked how she feels about the 2024 election, First Lady Jill Biden says, let's just say I was disappointed with how it unfolded. Asked why, she responds, I don't know. I learned a lot about human nature. I think that's all I'm going to say. Except it wasn't all that she was going to say, John. She had more to say. So before we get to more of her comments, I'm curious what you think so far.
Yeah, all of these people, like, stop whining. You're all so rich. You're all so rich. What do you have to complain about? God, I honestly, look, with the Jill Biden quote there, I honestly, I don't know exactly what she means. I think we all learned some stuff about human nature over the past few years, about how it's fallible and it eventually goes away and you can't keep doing the same things you were doing. There's a lot of stuff. And it's so weird to have this story where like Nancy Pelosi's a part of it. And so obviously she's gonna end up being wildly wrong in some fashion. She's obligated to, but also the Joe Biden stuff where like, he's literally just gonna spend the rest of his days talking about how he shouldn't have dropped out, rather than just taking the fact that we gave him some credit for stepping down amidst all the criticism, which I think is justified. You get some credit for that. And now he's gonna work until his dying days to lose that credit that we already gave him.
Oh my God. At 81, he's still 81, right? He might be 82, I have no idea. But 81, 82, it doesn't matter.
I'm gonna be real, I don't often think about him anymore.
Same, unless I'm forced to. But I will say this, 81's gonna be great if, I don't really believe in God, but God willing, if I get to that age, I'm not gonna be thinking about power. I'm gonna be thinking about Sorrento. Hopefully I'll be there, okay? Hopefully that's where I'll be. But let's get to the rest of this interview because as I mentioned, she didn't want to stop talking about Pelosi. She continued. The interviewer brought up Nancy Pelosi, who reportedly led the charge behind the scenes to get Joe Biden to drop out of the 2024 presidential race for good reason. And so Washington Post accuses Pelosi of going on Morning Joe in July with a shiv. And in response, First Lady Jill Biden says, like I said, I've been thinking a lot about relationships. I'm sure you have. And then she says, it's been on my mind a lot lately. And Jill pauses. We were friends for 50 years. She's using her teacher's voice now. It was disappointing. Like, I can't. Now, her close friend, who has the unfortunate name Mary Duty, unsurprisingly agrees with her, saying it was awful. It was mean. It was mean, John. It was mean that Biden was pushed out, pressured to drop out of the race. It was disrespectful. She talked a lot about that. I know I'm biased, but Joe Biden did not deserve that. Okay, the American people didn't deserve what happened. The American people didn't deserve an incumbent president who clearly was suffering from mental decline, refusing to follow through on his promise of not running for a second term. It was unfair and mean of the Democrats to engage in a cover-up. It was unfair and mean to care more about the ambitions and power of one individual to the detriment of Democratic voters. That was what was mean, okay? And it's just amazing to me how much these people just care about their own power. They don't care about anything else. At least that's what appears to be the case here. It's so infuriating, John. Now, asked if she thinks Biden has the capacity to govern as president for another 4 years, here's what Jill Biden had to say. Sure, Jill says when asked whether her husband could have governed the country for another 4 years. I mean, today, I think he has a full schedule. He started early with interviews and briefings, and it just keeps going. We saw the debate, Jill. We saw the debate and everything else that's transpired after that. Today, during a press conference, while announcing the ceasefire deal, apparently he said that Hezbollah carried out the attacks in Israel on October 7th. It was Hamas, but he makes these kinds of mistakes all the time. He called Vladimir Zelensky, Vladimir Putin, to his face during the NATO summit.
That's just negging, though. That's a power play.
Is it?
Yeah. And also Hezbollah people just want to put them everywhere. He's saying they're the ones who carried out the attacks. Trump was saying that they were responsible for January 6th. It's just like every terror group wants credit, but usually they have to have done something to earn it. Hezbollah just gets credit for everything.
I know, it's amazing. Now, when USA Today asked Joe the same question, like, do you think you can govern for another 4 years? Well, he says, I don't know, who the hell knows?
Inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And look, before we put too much stake in how Jill Biden views her husband, remember that this is how she reacted after that disastrous presidential debate last June.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
I would be so offended if my spouse spoke to me like that in front of a crowd. Like, it just seems so condescending, so patronizing. Anyway, so there you have it. Before we move on to why I believe that this Washington Post interview was nothing more than a puff piece, any final thoughts on the bitterness, the saltiness among the Bidens?
Yeah, look, I guess, if I'm trying to be unbiased, it's Jill's position to support her spouse, I suppose. Jill, she's not a politician. She's not running for office or whatever. She loves Joe or whatever, but like, it's just both of them. At some point, you can stop talking about it. You can do that. Like, if it gets brought up, then sure, you have to defend him against all evidence, but you just don't have to keep talking about it, in public, in private. And for Joe in particular, like, his response is basically like, let's see what happens. It's not a small role being president. It's kind of important. And we saw the polling. Like, it would be one thing if it was like he's neck and neck with Trump and we're progressive, so we're pushing for someone we prefer. He could see that as being unfair. He was trailing the whole time. At a certain point, like, you have to bow down to the weight of evidence against you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, again, aside from the spicy comments about Pelosi, the Washington Post feature is, again, very clearly a puff piece for Jill. And look, to be fair, she's the first lady, right? It's not like she's in Congress and she's really screwing the American people over on behalf of her donors. I mean, that would matter a lot more. And I'd be much more upset if it was a puff piece on like a member of Congress. But in this case, while recounting a trip she took to Italy, the Post writes that out of Washington, she looked 10 years younger. They describe her as a political spouse who never sought the spotlight. Come on. And they run cover for her part in basically engaging in this cover up and hiding from the American people that her husband was suffering from serious mental decline. Jill's maternal reputation for keeping things together was recast by the chattering classes as a scheme to mask her husband's alleged decline. Alleged decline? Alleged decline. Kara, over at the Washington Post, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't say your editor did this. This isn't the headline. This is in your piece. Alleged decline? Come on.
Look at the chattering coming out of you, you chatterer, you.
It's what I do.
chatter. Yeah,
Amazing.
it's just
Jill, this is more. I can't believe it. Jill was Edith Wilson, they said, who ran the White House after her husband had a stroke. No, Jill was Lady Macbeth, they said, who manipulates her husband into reaching for power beyond his means. In fact, Jill was just Jill Biden, a woman who believes in her husband no matter what.
Just Jill. That should be the book.
Remember in the beginning of his term, anyone who called her just Jill would be scolded for not calling her Dr. Jill Biden.
Oh, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
And hey, yeah, I come through academia. I respect her wanting the label, but yeah, it's a puff piece. I hate stuff like this. I feel like every time I go to like the Washington Post, the New York Times, there's some article on the right that's like, blank actress is done living for the critics or something, or like it's just like, oh God, your PR person just wrote that headline for them, didn't that you paid them or something? I hate that stuff. They already have every advantage in the world with power and access and money, and now the media just. But I will say, my calibration for evaluating puff pieces has changed of late. Because while this article is basically just a gift being given to the Biden family, it's not a $40 million gift. It's not, Amazon handing over an unprecedented sum of money to the incoming president's family as the most obvious bribe in history by a wealthy man. And so there are puff pieces, and then there are wildly corrupt, should be illegal puff pieces.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a good point. I mean, as the owner of a major American newspaper, should Jeff Bezos be allowed to fund to the tune of how much? I don't even remember the exact figure, but it was a lot.
40 million. 40 million.
40 million. Okay, 40 million.
Imagine if Washington Post paid Jill Biden $40 million to do this interview.
I mean,
what
that would
Trump
be
say?
the most. I mean, it's unethical. I would be furious about that.
Yeah, it would be wildly unethical, and I think that the Amazon thing is wildly unethical.
Yeah.
It should be illegal to do what they're doing.
Yeah, but we want to reform campaign finance laws altogether. They should be publicly financed. We should get money out of politics, and we should ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. Until we do that, our system is inherently broken, period.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.